Good morning. This morning I'm going to make some broth that we can use in some of our soup recipes over the next couple weeks. And it's actually called bone broth. I don't know if you ever tried that, but it gives a most delicious base to your soups and stews. This is what I'm going to cook it in, the Instant Pot pressure cooker. Why would you cook bone broth? Well, there's a reason. Most people use something like beef broth when they make their soups and stews, and there's a lot of ingredients in here that we really don't need. For example, this is a very well-known beef broth. It includes a lot of other things that we don't necessarily want to include in our food. Hydrolyzed corn protein, monosodium glutamate, natural flavors, corn sugar, caramel color, onion powder, thiamine, hydrochloride, disodium glutamate, disodium isonate. Now, all those things I don't keep on my pantry shelf, and even though this is quick and easy, we're going to make something much more healthy. We're going to use all natural ingredients. Let me show you the ingredients now. Okay, we're going to use some standard stuff that adds a lot of flavor to our food. A couple stalks of celery, probably about 8 stalks there. I'm going to use some fresh thyme, some rosemary, a couple peppers, a handful of garlic cloves, some onion, and some organic carrots. I'm going to add a little parsley, a little bit of vinegar, apple cider vinegar, and some beef bones. Now, you can use bones that you might have from meat that you cooked. You can use the bone out of a T-bone steak. You can use bone from a roast, but I didn't have any fresh bones on hand. So I went and bought from a butcher some bones that have a little bit of meat on. These are still frozen, but they have the marrow inside, and they're going to give us lots of flavor to this bone broth. Now, you don't have to worry about cutting things real pretty for this. We're just going to hack these in half and open up the onion a couple chunks. Carrots don't have to be peeled or fussed with. We're going to cut them in about 4 pieces. And the herbs that we're going to use, the fresh herbs, can go in just like this. Because when we finish cooking it in the Instant Pot, we're just going to strain it out so that we have a clear broth. And I'll show you that step next. For example, the peppers, I'm just going to take off the stems and the part that has the big amount of seeds in. I just want to get some exposed edges so that when they're cooking, the flavors come out. Like I said, it doesn't have to be pretty. Let's take the celery. You can just do a couple chunks like this so they're floating around and they get a lot of exposed edges. That's what I'm looking for. As we get these things cut, we're just going to toss them into the Instant Pot pressure cooker. Fill it up with flavor. We have all the garlic here. I'm going to take a couple sprigs of the rosemary, a couple sprigs of the thyme. These smell so good, and we know that they're going to cause the broth to taste good too. Now, the organic carrots, where I live, we can't even get carrots that aren't organic because finally organic carrots are becoming cheaper than regular carrots, and that's a good sign. Let me just wash these off real quick. I would just cut off the dirty looking ends of these. We can't seem to clean, and then just make some nice big chunks out of the carrots. Toss them in. The onion, I'm just going to take the outer skin off. The onion, I'm just going to kind of quarter it up a little bit. It'll fall apart in there. all on its own. Add a little parsley. And I'm just going to add about a 1/4 cup of vinegar. Just a splash. And the bones, yeah, I wanted to mention, if you go to your butcher, you'll probably get these pretty cheap or almost free. But if you have some of your own already cooked chicken bones and meat bones or whatever, if you have some already cooked beef bones, you can save them in your freezer, and when you're ready to make a stock like this, you can just throw them in. But the little bits of meat will add flavor. Sometimes you have more meat on your bones than this. Now I'm going to add about 8 cups of water. Now take a look in there. I'm going to make sure that there's enough water that we have like a good amount of stock afterwards, because after we take out the vegetables, of course it's going to shrink down. The idea here is strain out all the vegetables. We're really not going to use them in the stock. They're just going to be a clear stock. We're just going to have a clear stock when we're finished. Why am I doing this in the morning? Because I want the stock to cool all day long, and so we can separate any fat that comes to the top. And then we're going to reserve some for future cooking, and some I'm going to cook with a special soup today. Now let's top it off with the lid. We're going to put this on manual setting, and I'm going to raise the time to an hour. That may seem like a long cooking time, but we want the flavors to really get into the liquid before we take out the vegetables. All right, that's going to come to pressure, cook for an hour, then we'll release the steam. Time's almost up, then we'll let the pressure out. Okay, release the pressure, and we'll be back when it's empty. All right, let's unveil the bone broth. Wow, look at that, look at that. All right, so you can see there's not a lot of dark coloring in. Oh, forget that. All right, let's take out the big chunks, and then we'll strain the broth. Now take a look at these bones. All the meat bits have cooked off. The marrow has cooked out. So we have lots of nutritious, delicious bits in here. Once I get out the bones, we're just going to strain a few more vegetables. There's the spices. Now you can see there's fat floating on top here, so the next important step after we strain this is to separate the fat and the broth. Just going to scoop out a few more vegetables to make it easy to strain. Now the vegetables are pretty mushed up. I don't think I would reuse them for anything else, though people could reuse them. They're not going to be used here today because they're kind of coated with a little of the fat, and they have served their purpose. All right, now let's take this canister out and strain it. If you have a cheesecloth or a nice wire strainer, you can use that. I'm simply going to use the colander with some nice paper towels, and we're going to strain the broth through into a pan. Now this is very hot yet, so we're going to do it slowly. Sure smells good. I'm going to stop there and lift the colander out. And it will separate all the little leaves of the spices. That will leave our broth to be nice and clear. It's a simple, inexpensive way to do this. You just make a filter out of your paper towels. All right. Now we have a nice pan full of the broth, and I'm going to pour it into a container so we can put a lid on it and cool it down. I'm going to use a large heavy-duty plastic container, but I'm using one that's rather tall so that most of the fat comes up to the top and we can just scoop it off when it gets cold. So let's carefully pour this into the container. Now in Pennsylvania today we have what's the temperature?
32 degrees right now outside.
All right, it's 32 degrees outside, so rather than
Partly cloudy. 50% chance of rain, 50% chance of snow.
I'm going to put this outside and let it cool down rather than make the refrigerator get warm, or rather than wait all day to let this cool. So we're going to stick it outside, let the fat rise to the top, and then we'll remove the fat. Let's take it out there. All right, I'm just going to leave the container out here on the porch where it's nice and cold, and it won't take long at all for this to cool down. In the meantime, Rick's taking me out for lunch. We're going to Dickie's. We'll be back. We just got back from Dickie's. Boy, that was a good lunch. If you want to see that video, check out Rick's. I'll put the link to that. That was kind of fun. But now we're going to check on the bone broth. Now, what I noticed is it's been sitting out here in the 30-degree temperature all day, and no fat came up to the top. I even just put a couple ice cubes in here just to see if any fat would rise, and I don't see any. So what we have is a really lovely broth, low fat, you would have to say. And I'm going to pour off a container that we're going to freeze for a future soup. And then I'm going to use this today. I'm going to use this to make a tortellini soup today. So I'll put that video on later too. But that's it for the bone broth segment. So try making some bone broth sometime, and you won't have all the additives that are in the box on the shelf. So thanks for watching my videos, and please subscribe. I'll put the Instant Pot link below and the link to Rick's Dickie's video, and you can enjoy them too. Thanks.